Oh yeah, citizens of the world. This is Ethan from Real Life English, where every single week it is our mission to take you beyond the classroom to live your English in real life, to become a confident, natural English speaker, connect to the world, and actually use your English as a doorway to your biggest dreams. And as always, I'm joined here in the global studio by the man who is the globetrotter with a newfound wanderlust, or wanderlust, you could say. Thiago, how's it going?
Hey Ethan, I'm doing well, man. How are you?
I'm doing fantastic.
Hey everybody, nice to see you all again. Ethan, you used some really nice words there. First of all, I think you said globetrotter. You referred to me as a globetrotter.
Globetrotter. Do you know the Globetrotters? Have you ever heard of that basketball team?
No, is that a basketball team too? Oh man.
There's a basketball team, but they're more of performers because they're all about doing tricks and stuff. And the name comes from, of course, like to trot, I think you know, is what a horse does. A horse trots, and we say someone who likes to travel all around the world is a globetrotter.
So someone who likes to travel is a globetrotter.
Exactly. Someone who never stops traveling.
Oh, nice.
Myself in my 20s, I was a globetrotter.
That's a good one. And you also mentioned newfound wanderlust.
So I said wanderlust or wanderlust. Pardon I've lost most of my German, so pardon my German accent, but it's a word that comes from German in English, and literally it means the love of wandering, the love of exploring. So someone who has wanderlust, they just feel anxious if they're too long in the same spot. They need to get out, they need to discover the world. Maybe like Supertramp from Into the Wild. We watched that several episodes back, right?
Wander is like when you walk around aimlessly, right? No clear destination.
Exactly.
You're just exploring places, right?
Exactly. It's a great word because I think it doesn't exist in a lot of other languages, this kind of sense of aimlessly walking about without a destination.
That is very true. Similar to strolling, right? I don't think of any word in Portuguese that is similar to strolling. We usually say the word walk. Yeah.
Exactly.
Go for a walk.
It's the beauty of English. The reason I was saying this is because we just last week came back from our company Real Life English Summit in Cusco, Peru. And this was your first time outside of your home country. So, I was curious if you got bit by the travel bug by that experience. Now you're going to become this person, a backpacker, a wanderer.
I'm not sure about being a backpacker or to be wandering around, but definitely I'm more open now to exploring more places, that's for sure.
And I think that all this vocabulary we're talking about, we're going to try to bring up lots of vocabulary for you guys. With today, we're going to be teaching a little bit through the story of our journey to Peru, to one of the wonders of the world, Machu Picchu, which was a really spectacular experience to have together with everyone on our team. But I thought a good place for us to jump off here would be, Thiago, I really loved when you arrived in Cusco, and I was asking you about, okay, it's your first experience being physically outside of Brazil. What is it like? And I really loved what you were saying just about your experience, just arriving in Lima, all these differences that you noticed. So do you want to tell our listeners, viewers, a little bit about that?
Yeah, it was funny because when I landed in Lima, Peru, simply by looking around inside the airport, I realized, okay, I am in a different country. Because the signs were written in another language that wasn't my native Portuguese. Even the smell of the place was different. And then I was like, oh, okay, I am officially outside of Brazil. That's incredible. So from the get-go, from the airport, I started to just absorb everything, just try to take everything in, because everything was new, and different. And then you start observing how people do things, how they walk, how they talk, how things work. So it's an interesting experience.
Dealing with with the culture shock, with being in a country that you've never experienced before, I've become quite accustomed to it because I've lived in different countries, I've traveled quite a bit. But I do remember the first experiences, the first time I lived in Germany, for example. It was even, of course, there's the aspect of learning the language too, but even just dealing with all those differences, it's a lot of stimulation to the brain, and it can even be exhausting at times. Like you need to close up and be just in alone to kind of process everything, reflect, be with something more familiar.
This is very true what you say. And I think as good introverts as both of us are, that can be quite exhausting because, after a while, you do need, like you said, to get away and be alone for a while, to just ponder, reflect about things and just, process what you experience, right?
Even make a phone call home, speak your mother tongue for a little bit, have a little bite of familiarity, or eat some pão de queijo or paçoquinha or something like that.
Yeah, talking about beans, I miss beans in Peru, but that's okay.
Yeah. One of the interesting things we actually learned there, right, was that potatoes and I believe corn as well come from there. And they had something like, I believe, 2,000 varieties of corn, hundreds of varieties of potato, all these things that really the Incans helped to cultivate, which the Incans were the people that were living there that had really taken over most of the country before the Spanish settlers, the colonizers arrived.
Yeah. I saw some really huge corn there, like with the huge grains. I hadn't seen those in Brazil before.
And they even had I don't know if you got to try the chicha morada, the drink that's made from the purple corn. It's like a really purple drink.
No, I didn't. Is it good?
It was interesting. It's not like something that I would drink every day, but being there, I enjoyed drinking it a few times. Yeah. But if I had the choice, usually I'd go for a pisco sour.
Yeah, pisco sour was really good. I really like that. Yeah, the pisco. Yeah. And some restaurants, they would even give us some pisco out of as courtesy, right? Like, hey, we just walked in, sat down. Here's some pisco for you. Like, oh, thank you.
We might say to wet your whiskers, something just to get you craving another drink after that, because you have one. One is never enough, right?
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Never enough.
And so we went to Peru, as I mentioned, for our Real Life English Company Summit, all 15 people on our team going there. It's really amazing because we work fully online most of the time, right? It's really amazing when we have these experiences where we can all come together in person. It can be really ephemeral or really difficult to even explain what the experience is like to other people. When we go back home, you can't quite pass what that experience was like onto them, right?
Yeah.
And especially doing it somewhere as magical as Peru and Machu Picchu and everything was especially special.
It is, yeah.
But we do this every year so we can kind of get away from it all, come together in person, right?
Yeah, what does it mean, by the way, when you get away from it all?
Yeah, oftentimes we'd use this when you have the hustle and bustle of normal life. You're busy, you're always working or dealing with children or dealing with other things, your daily routine, right? Sometimes you need to get away from it all, change things up, go on vacation or explore a new culture, have new experiences, be out of your routine and so on, right?
Yeah. Change scenery.
Change your scenery. Yeah. What does that mean?
Yeah, change your environment a little bit, go someplace else, a new place, breathe a different kind of air.
The different smells of the Lima airport.
The different smells of the airport. Yeah, appreciate all of that. Yeah, all different.
You can always notice, like when you're in a new place, it smells different.
Yeah, it does.
Interesting. Yeah. And I thought that we could also, starting from this being your first trip abroad, I thought it could be interesting too, just to talk about the trip. I know you started in Curitiba, in the place where you live, and you flew to Brasilia. You had a layover in Brasilia, right? And then a layover also in Lima. So how did it go? Was it pretty smooth sailing, or did you have any challenges on your way, on your hero's journey to Cusco?
Yeah, it wouldn't be the hero's journey or an interesting story if we hadn't had any obstacles, right? So yeah, at first everything was fine and dandy. By the way, you mentioned layover. Layover is when you have to wait in the airport, for maybe a few hours until our next flight, right? I would say that inside Brazil, everything was okay. I went from Curitiba to Curitiba to Brasilia. That was fine. But then in Brasilia, something happened because, we were going to take the flight from Brasilia to Lima already. And, I'm a person who likes to travel light. I like to travel light. I don't like to carry a bunch of bags with me. I'm very minimalistic with my baggage. Part of that is because I like to take with me the bags on the plane, like carry-on bags. I don't like to dispatch my bags. But in Brasilia, the woman there from the airline company, she told us that You know, the aircraft was full as it was. It was at its full capacity, and we had to dispatch our bags. So I didn't want to do it, but me and two other team members who were traveling with me, we dispatched our bags. And what happened was we were supposed to get our bags back in Cusco, but then in Lima, we found out that we were supposed to get them there because they had been retrieved. And it was interesting because we were in Lima and we were already at the gate waiting for our flight to Cusco. And then it was really packed, crowded. And then I saw this airport employee, this woman, walking around there. And she was calling out some names. At first, I didn't make much of it. But then, I started hearing Alencar, Aquino, Alencar, which are my last names. And I was like, I think she's calling me. And then when I noticed that she was calling me, and then I went to talk to her, and then she told me that we were not supposed to get our bags in Cusco, as the plan was. We had to get them there in Lima because they had been retrieved. Long story short, we missed our flight to Cusco because of that. And it was an adventure because I don't know, people don't seem to speak much English there. So I don't speak Spanish. Neither of us spoke Spanish, so we tried to communicate in English. And then finally we found a guy there who could help us. And then we had to check what the next flight to Cusco would be and get the tickets for that, and then do the whole process again of going through security, checking in. We ended up, I think, spending the whole afternoon in Lima. But it was okay. Yeah, we were having a good time. We were cool about it. But that was one obstacle we faced.
And our trials and tribulations didn't stop there. The first day, we planned to do sort of an escape room, which in retrospect, looking back, that might not have been the best choice for our first day because many people listening or watching might not know Cusco is at approximately 3,000 meters. That's really high for people. I mean, I come from Colorado, but even my hometown is at 2,000 meters. So it's an intense experience for most people going to that high of altitude. And the escape room, it wasn't really an escape room. It was more of a scavenger hunt around Cusco, which was super cool, but just not the best plan for the first day because Cusco is a very hilly city, a lot of ups and downs that you have to do. And Thiago and I actually, we were in 3 teams. Everyone in our organization were broken into 3 teams. And Thiago and I were actually on the same team. So we had this shared experience that it was a lot of fun. It was super interesting, but absolutely exhausting. All these ups and downs, the hot sun of midday beating down upon us.
Yeah.
It was really cool though, right? We got to know we got off the beaten path a little bit. We got to know some lesser known attractions of the city. Yeah,
just to explain very quickly here, it was like a scavenger hunt in the sense that we had missions to perform around the city and we had a map. So it was a really cool way of kind of forcing you to explore the city on foot and getting to know the different places and learning more about the city was really nice. But since it was the first day, the altitude was much higher. It's harder to breathe there. It seems like there's less oxygen. Going up, man, walking up was like,
not again. I also remember we had to stop off for like a beer break, right?
We did, right? Yeah.
To wet our palate, wet our whiskers. Cool. And both of us mentioned it was like a scavenger hunt. Traditionally, an escape room, I've done several escape rooms, and usually you're indoors. Usually you're inside of a place and you have to solve puzzles. And maybe the last one I did, there was even, a crazy clown like trying to kill us. So this was a very different sort of escape room in that there was no room. So we said it's more like a scavenger hunt. What's a scavenger?
It's a person who goes looking for treasures, right? Treasures or...
Exactly. Yeah. And our team actually won, right? Like it was kind of a competition. And we were the fastest ones and also the ones with the most convincing story for the Padre Loyola. I think was his name.
Yeah.
So, if anyone's going to Cusco, we can even share in the description and the show notes. The guy who organizes this is absolutely amazing. He's a guy from France that's been living for years in Cusco. So if you're heading to Cusco, it's something different and fun you can do, just maybe not on your first day. So some other things. You mentioned the altitude sickness, right? And something really interesting there is that they chew coca leaves. So most people know the drug cocaine is derived from coca leaves, which is a plant that comes from, I believe it originates also from Peru, from the Andes. But the leaves and such aren't a drug, right? It goes through a process, a chemical process to create cocaine. But the leaves there, they're legal, and it's actually something that you can chew on, and it really helps with the altitude sickness. And they suggest this when you're in Cusco, when you're having to climb up and down these hills, when you go to Machu Picchu as well. Many of us hiked up to Machu Picchu, and the coca leaves can help a lot to deal with the reality of the high altitude. But it's that kind of thing that a lot of people might have a stigma about or a taboo about, as in they find it's not... We tend to think down on these sort of things because cocaine is illegal in most countries, for example, but it's just a plant, right? And it's not like a really strong drug effect or anything. It just helps to give you a little buzz, which helps you to deal with many of the symptoms of altitude sickness, like nausea, lack of oxygen, lack of energy, and so on.
Still about the weather there in Cusco, I found the weather pretty harsh, especially for people who come from other countries, because not only we have the altitude that is high, it's harder to breathe there, but I found that it was really cold. During the day it was around 20 degrees. That's fine, but
it was hot actually during the day because it's close to the equator, so the sun was really strong, and it can be deceiving because in the mornings we always started out so bitterly cold, right? But then it started, and you'd go out with a jacket, but then by midday you're sweating, and many of us even got sunburnt and everything because the sun there is no joke. It's really powerful.
Yeah, it's true. So early in the morning, 0 degree, 1, and also at night it was really cold as well. So, I found the air really dry as well. Really dry air. Combining that with the cold, you got nosebleeds and chapped lips, and it wasn't a pretty sight.
What does that mean if you get nosebleeds and chapped lips? What does that mean?
When your nose starts bleeding. Yeah, there was a point there. I blew my nose and, there was blood on the toilet paper. Yeah, I guess, I don't know. It hurts your nostrils somehow.
It dries them all out. So I think it tends to, especially when you're not used to it. It's very similar in Colorado. So for me, it wasn't such a shocking experience. I think I have some natural acclimation from growing up in Colorado. And you might want to bring things like chapstick. As you mentioned, you get chapped lips, so you want to use chapstick to hydrate your lips.
Yeah.
So what does it mean if your lips are chapped?
You have little fissures, right, in them, and they hurt. Yeah, because they got so dried up that you get fissures.
We were taking quite an intense pace, right, with doing the escape room, doing many things on the first day. The second day, we already started doing workshops and so on, which we had all these amazing workshops, but it did become quite exhausting just because we probably need a little bit more time just to sit and rest, which we didn't plan in. We weren't ready for the shocking reality of Cusco. So if anyone travels there, we definitely recommend like a day or two just to chill out, relax, get acclimated, and then you can start on your adventures. But we've been talking for a while, and we shouldn't leave off the climax of our adventure, which of course was journeying to one of the 7 wonders of the world, which is the beautiful ruins of Machu Picchu hidden up in the mountains. So we actually did a tour first, right, of the Sacred Valley, which is really cool because I'd been like 7 years ago or so, I went to Machu Picchu, but I didn't it was a very fast trip, and I didn't get to see all these cool places that we saw along the way to Machu Picchu, like I think it's called 𝗥𝗲𝗹𝗟𝗶𝗀𝗵 something, that I even would have liked to have spent more time in that town because it just had this really cool backpacker vibe, had all these cool shops and little restaurants in the plaza.
Yeah. I think that was the last place we visited before Machu Picchu, right?
Right.
It was also kind of a hill that you had to walk up, right?
It's where we caught the train. Yeah, another difficult journey, right? Hiking up the ruins there.
Yeah. But, it's really high. Yeah. And it's funny because you start walking, and you don't realize that you're actually climbing. At some point, you've walked so much up that when you look down, you are really up there. And I don't even realize, like, oh man, I mean, I'm climbing without gear. You know?
It was so beautiful, though.
Yeah, it was.
They had two those. We stopped to see those capsule hotels they've built there on the cliffs, and I don't know. I don't know if I would ever dare to stay in one of those. It's definitely, if someone has fear of heights, it would not be for you. But you actually have to climb up. They have like sort of like a ladder, but I think you wear rock climbing gear and you have to climb up. So from there, we caught the train in 𝗥𝗲𝗹𝗟𝗶𝗀𝗵. It's a difficult name to say. We caught the train to there, all already very tired, to Machu Picchu. And we arrived in 𝗥𝗲𝗹𝗟𝗶𝗀𝗟𝗃, which often is called Machu Picchu town, because it's, I think, the starting point for when you're wanting to journey up to Machu Picchu. So we actually stayed overnight in a hostel there, right? And it was a bit of another kind of rough experience after staying in a hotel in comparison. Staying in a hostel wasn't quite as, a bit more earthy, we could say, right?
Earthy, yeah. Yeah, I find hostels to be places, man, I mean, for young single people.
Yeah.
I mean, you're young, you don't have much money, and you want to get to know people, and you are in that adventure mode. Man, it's a perfect place for that. You get to talk to people, you get to meet people there. Yeah, but there is this, let's say, more rough quality to it. You know, it's not so comfortable.
𝗥𝗲𝗹𝗟𝗃, it really is they take advantage that it's one of the main touristic destinations. So even if you're not someone you're not like a single backpacker without a lot of money, it's still expensive to stay in a hotel there, you know?
Yeah, very touristic.
It's, you might have to rough it in a hostel, depending on what your budget is.
Yeah, but I found this city quite cute, actually, you know? The 𝗥𝗲𝗹𝗟𝗃.
Quaint, right? We could say.
Quaint, yeah. You know, like picturesque and like old, but in a cute way, you know?
To me, it seemed like it had changed a lot since I stayed there 7 years ago, because there were all these, I just remember arriving there at night this time, and there were all these bright lights. It looked like a Peruvian Las Vegas, you know?
Wow.
Yeah, we actually, some of us, I know you didn't do this, some of us actually went to, it's called 𝗥𝗲𝗹𝗟𝗃, which in Spanish means means literally hot waters, because they have hot springs there. And hot spring is a place where water naturally shoots up out of the earth, and it has the natural what is that called? Thermodynamics or there's a word for this, but the natural heat that comes from the middle of the earth, right? And that was a really cool experience too, to finish up our day after walking around in the hot sun all day in Machu Picchu, being able to just relax, have a nice pisco sour, have a nice hot bath.
I heard that the smell of the water is a little bit weird.
It's funky.
Yeah.
I'm also used to that because I grew up, we have hot springs in my hometown, and there's other towns nearby that have hot springs. And it just comes with the territory. If you're wanting to go to these places, which are really relaxing and really nice, that smell, because of the minerals like sulfur that's in this water, is really normal, and you get used to it very quickly. There's a town near mine actually it's called 𝗥𝗲𝗹𝗟𝗃, and it has a lot of hot springs, like quite a big hot spring. And so the whole town smells like this. Anyways, we still haven't gotten to Machu Picchu. So we stayed in this hostel, right? We got up at the crack of dawn to, at least you said you took the bus, right? So you got to sleep in a little bit more, but still getting up at the crack of dawn because we wanted to get there for sunrise. And those of us that hiked up, which was like, I think half the people hiked up, half the people took the bus. And we had to get up maybe 30 minutes or 45 minutes before you all that were taking the bus. And there's something like, I think it's 1,600 steps to hike up. So we decided a group of us decided to do this. I'd already done it 7 years ago. Actually, I remember it being easier than it is. It's a challenge to get up there, but it was also, fun. I think we just started off too fast, started off with a really ambitious pace. And then eventually we changed the person in the front to have someone slower going in the front so that we would have a more moderate, leisurely pace. And then it was much better, Luckily it was still dark, so it wasn't too hot yet. But then we got to the top all, sweaty and everything. And then it kind of set in the cold, the reality of the temperature once we didn't have our hearts racing anymore.
But yeah, we got up there eventually.
It was an adventure, right?
To the entrance of Machu Picchu, right? The entrance, right?
To 𝗏𝗏𝗃𝗏. We thought that climbing was done, but it wasn't, of course. We had to then climb up into the park, climb up to the highest spot so that we could be at the perfect place to watch the sunrise, take some nice selfies.
Yeah. That was the highlight for sure, man. Being up there in Machu Picchu, you know. It's crazy to think that they actually built a city on top of a mountain. I mean, how?
Before all of our trucks and cranes and all of these things that facilitate construction nowadays.
Yeah. The experience being up there, watching the sunrise, man, that was something else. That was surreal.
Yeah. That was really, I'm really glad too we did the tour so that she created a really nice moment for us, the tour guide. She told us to face where the sun was going to come up and actually put our arms up to receive it, right? I don't know. It felt kind of like a spiritual, a really ephemeral moment, right?
It felt so powerful. You were receiving the energy of the sun, like literally, right?
Exactly.
And then from the top, of course, we had to take pictures, right? At the top there.
We spent, I don't know, 30 minutes taking a variety of different selfies. And it's really like it almost becomes like a fight, you know, to like get in between people because there's everyone that goes there. Luckily, going there early, at first there weren't many people, so we could get some good shots. But then it just becomes I don't know, it becomes kind of like a cluster. It becomes like a frenzy of all these people trying to get into like a space to be able to take a selfie without someone else bombing your photo. And that is a little bit stressful for me. I'm not a huge fan of that, all the posturing, the posing, and so on. But I'm glad that we could get there early enough that we didn't have to deal with that, at least at the beginning.
Yeah, sometimes we had to wait a little bit, but you know, it was all right. Maybe because of the time, we got there early.
Some people were really like pros, like they really thought out. They brought costumes with them, they brought gear with them to really get like that perfect selfie for their Instagram, right?
Yeah. I mean, getting up there is a journey. Yeah, so it's not like you gotta seize that moment to take pictures because otherwise, who knows when you're gonna get back there? Yeah, so
you're not coming back tomorrow. And of like the things that we saw in the Machu Picchu village there, was there anything that stood out to you as particularly mind-blowing or fascinating?
Two things. On the positive side, I found the way they worked with the rocks and the stones was fascinating because, you know, I think the temples had different stones that were more polished. Yeah. And the regular peasant houses, they were more rough looking. Yeah, the stones were not maybe so polished. Yeah, I found that fascinating how they did that, right? That was on the positive side. On the negative side, a little bit, I got a little scared walking up there, you know, because sometimes for you to get from one area to the next area of the city, you have to walk on these very narrow set of stairs made of rocks, and on one side,
like cobblestone, right?
There you go. And on one side, okay, you have the wall here, but on the other side, you have nothing. You have the abyss, you know, and there's no protection. You know, there's only a little rope that I don't know what the purpose is because, you know, it doesn't protect from anything, you know. And then I was like, man,
mental security.
I mean, you really got to pay attention to your foot. Because if you start looking at the landscape, these mountains are so beautiful. I don't know. You might trip and just, you know, fall into, you know, your death there. Of course, it's relatively safe up there. Okay, guys. But that was a little bit scary. Yeah.
Especially when you're sleep deprived from waking up at 4:30 in the morning. You know, you might not be at your most adroit, at your most, graceful. Even if there weren't the ruins there, it would still be like a place worth visiting because it's just these huge pillars of rocks, these mountains that just seem almost like they're floating there.
And it's hard to describe. You have to be up there to feel it.
Dear listener, viewer, we highly recommend that you get to Machu Picchu before they're restricted anymore. You know, maybe at some point they might close off the actual village and everything. You never know. So get there while you can. And we have a short clip actually from a documentary that talks about Machu Picchu, talks a little bit about the discovery, the history, that we thought it would be fun to share with you because we got to learn all of this with a tour guide, and it's super interesting how the Incans did this. But before we do that, we have a shout out to a very special app user and podcast listener. And by the way, if you're not using the Real Life English app yet, I highly recommend you do that because we've been trying to define some of the vocabulary and expressions related to travel, but there's also a lot that I've noticed that we've used and we've been forgetting to define, but there on the app, you'll have all of the most important, most difficult words for you to find. So definitely check that out. So let's check out our shout out.
All right, this one goes to Elena. And Elena says, this is the best app for English learners forever. I fell in love with you guys and suppose until the end of my life. I've never thought that studying English might be so fun, enjoyable, and captivating. I highly recommend everyone who wants to improve their English skills to try this app. It is worth the hype, believe me. Oh yeah.
Ooh, what does it mean if something is worth the hype?
When you hype about something, you talk wonders about it, right? Like, oh, this is great, this is so cool, this is amazing. A lot of people are talking or speaking good things about something. That's the hype. Yeah. If it's worth it.
There might be hype around a new restaurant or a new bar, a new club. There's a lot of hype around Machu Picchu, right? We could say that Machu Picchu, going to Machu Picchu, it's worth the hype.
Yeah, so it's worthwhile.
So thanks so much, Elena, for your kind words. So great to hear that the app is helping you to take your English to the next level. And you, dear listener, dear viewer, if you've not yet checked out the app, definitely give it a go. It's the only place where anytime, anywhere, you can just press a button and connect to another English speaker in another part of the world. Who knows, maybe you'll connect to someone from Peru and you can ask them about some of the things that we're learning today. That said, let's check out the documentary.
Pablo Neruda, the South American poet, called it Tall Stepped City of Stone. Hiram Bingham, the North American historian who found it in 1911, said it was like an unbelievable dream.
Ethan, I think you mentioned that the guy who found Machu Picchu was like the real-life Indiana Jones, right?
We were actually split into two tour groups, right? And I think at first you were with the other tour guide, but our tour guide was explaining this to us, that Hiram Bingham was like the real-life Indiana Jones. Indiana Jones is based off of him. And he heard this rumor or this story about a lost Incan city. He was the one to discover Machu Picchu because it was abandoned.
Yeah, and it was all covered in jungle, yeah?
Right. She was also telling us that he made a mistake, that it was really difficult to uncover everything, so he tried burning off the jungle covering, the plants, but they say this was a mistake because it probably also destroyed a lot of artifacts that weren't fireproof that could have been interesting to learn from.
Yeah.
It was the brainchild of Pachacuti, a country palace for the Inca, built on one of the most inaccessible sites on Earth. Brilliantly adapted to the natural landscape, it is an enduring monument to the architectural and engineering ability of the Inca. There was no shortage of stone to be quarried and run by ramp and roller to the site.
One of the first things I noticed there, Thiago, is what you were saying about that we were there at a time. We were there a good time of year. We had good weather. You can tell in this documentary they were not so fortunate because there was a lot of cloud cover. You can't quite, it's still beautiful, but you can't quite appreciate to the same level the natural beauty there.
Yeah, we were really lucky.
And I don't know who Pachacuti is. I'm guessing he was an Incan leader, but he says, this narrator says that it was the brainchild of Pachacuti. What does that mean if something is the brainchild of someone?
It's the creation. We understand that Pachacuti probably had the idea, he planned to build the city. So yeah, it was his brainchild, the brainchild of, Pachacuti.
He was up there hiking one day. He said, this would be a good place for a village.
Yeah, like, why not, right?
Despite all the difficulty to get things up there.
Yeah.
And he says it's built on one of the most inaccessible sites on Earth. I think also after visiting there, we can definitely appreciate that. What does it mean if something is inaccessible?
It's hard to access. It's hard to get to. And, Machu Picchu is a city, an old city, or an old town on top of a mountain, a really high mountain. So it is not easily accessible.
They were even telling us that the road, I don't know when they built that road. I think maybe it was, I'm not even going to guess, but it was a few decades ago, let's say. And the stairs, I think, were then from the 90s or maybe even sooner. The stairs are quite new. So these aren't things that the Incans had created. They didn't use those. They had a completely different path to getting there.
And I think this word is nice, right, Ethan? Site. What is a site in this case here?
I'm sure everyone listening, watching knows what a website is. So it comes from this word. A website is a place that you visit on the web, on the internet. A site is a place where something exists. So Machu Picchu, for example, is an archaeological site nowadays. It's a place where archaeologists go to study these ruins. So he said that it's brilliantly adapted to the natural landscape. That's something that we were talking about is even if there weren't a village there, it still would be a spectacular spot. What does that mean, landscape?
It's the natural view of the place, like, what nature looks like at a given place. In this case, the natural landscape in Machu Picchu are the mountains around, for example.
Yeah. In fact, we call, when you're taking a picture, when you take it this way, if you have your phone, you're taking it this way, it's called landscape. That's a landscape photo. And he continues to say that Machu Picchu is an enduring monument to the architectural and engineering ability of the Inca. So what does it mean if something is an enduring monument to something?
Yeah, something enduring, something that endures throughout time. So, it lasts a long time. I think, I don't know, that city has existed for 500 years now? Something like that. It's still standing pretty much, right? That's what it means. And a monument, could you define that one, Ethan? What is a monument in this case?
A monument, usually it's a building or it's something big that is man-made, that is something that people visit typically. But it's interesting because he says an enduring monument to the architectural and engineering ability of the Inca. So when using the two here, what he's saying is that it's something that gives a good example of these capabilities that the Inca had that were really before their time. It was really incredible, many of the things that the Incas knew about. They knew a lot about astrology. They knew a lot about science. They knew a lot about even physiology, about our bodies, animal bodies, and so on. And they were really great at, they showed us too, we talked about in 𝗥𝗲𝗹𝗟𝗶𝗀𝗵, that the stones, so it was kind of like a pyramid almost. It was, we mentioned that it was up really steep stairs. And we had a different guy there who he pointed to a mountain that was on the other side of the valley and said that the stones that they used to build this were from that mountain. So somehow they managed to bring these humongous stones that I have no idea how much they weigh, but they weigh much more than a single person or even, half a dozen people could carry from another mountain up a really high hill to build something. Yeah. Really absolutely incredible. And the way that they would cut these blocks, as you were mentioning, and sanding them and everything, it's just, they really, really were experts.
They knew what they were doing.
And he said that there was no shortage of stone. What does it mean if there's a shortage of something or there's not a shortage of something?
When there is a shortage of something, there is not enough of that thing. Let's say, there has been a shortage of jobs recently, not enough jobs. In this context here, there was no shortage of stone. It means there were many stones. And we do have a couple of nice words here, Ethan, that I wanted to ask you. First, to be quarried.
A quarry is a place where you dig up a certain type of stone, like maybe a coal quarry, a place where you're searching for coal. And he's using it as a verb here. So quarried, I think, is something like mined, to be cut out of the mountain, to be cut out of the rock.
And what about this rampant roller? Run by rampant roller.
That's some nice alliteration. Rampant roller. Something rolls. It's basically like a ball or a wheel rolls. And a roller would be for example, you have a rolling pin. Is a roller that you use in your kitchen to make pies and such, make cookies. Rampant is something that's with a lot of energy. We use this, for example, with COVID-19 was rampant, that it was spreading really quickly. So this is kind of poetic language. A rampant roller I imagine is that they had some sort of carts that would move very fast down the hills to bring them to the village.
Yeah, I was thinking of that, some sort of transportation for the rocks, you know?
All right, we have one more short part that we're going to watch with you guys. And we'll also, if you are interested in this, you want to learn more about Machu Picchu, we can link the full documentary in the description and in the show notes.
Even today, Machu Picchu is still a place of mystery. The most well-known of the Inca sites, and yet the one we know least about. What we do know is that after just 50 years in use, it was deserted, and the jungle grew back to reclaim and conceal the last great citadel of the Inca Empire.
What I found interesting is how he says that it's still a mystery today. I mean, that place, I mean, what was the original purpose of that city? Was it a military base, or was it a place for the nobles to just go to, you know, enjoy some time off or something? I mean, no one really knows.
That was actually, I remember the first time I went there, I believe that was the explanation that they gave us, was that it was a vacation area for the noble Incas. But there's a lot of operations, and they pointed out 2 universities to us and so on. So it seems like people actually were living there and doing the normal things that people live. It doesn't seem just like a vacation spot, although it's quite beautiful.
Yeah.
So there's a nice connected speech here as well. Says is still a place, and he reduces the A to a and links those two. Stilla is still a place.
Is still a place of mystery.
Then we have the most well-known of the Inca sites, and yet the one we know least about.
The most well-known of the Inca sites, and yet the one we know least about.
Yet the one. So a lot of times when we have a word ending a T and the next word beginning with a TH, we'll just drop the T and just keep the TH. So it'll be like yetta, and yet the one. And also we would cut the and there. So, and yet the one. And least about.
Least about.
We also have some linking there. Least about. So the A at the beginning of, we don't say about, we reduce that to a schwa sound, about, and we connect the T from least to it, least about. And he mentioned that, I mean, I don't remember hearing that it was in use just 50 years, but it was a place that wasn't around for a tremendous amount of time in use. But that seems crazy if they had a university, they had all these institutions and everything, that it was in use for such a short amount of time.
And not to mention the amount of time and energy that must have gone into building that place, and only to have it used 50 years?
He says that that it was deserted and the jungle grew back. So we talked about this, that 𝗏𝗵𝗵𝗃, it was covered by jungle when he arrived, and he burnt it all off. Probably a lot of the things that might have given us more clarification about Machu Picchu were destroyed, unfortunately. But what does that mean if a place is deserted?
Abandoned. It was abandoned. There was no body there. Nothing was going on.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And we use this figuratively a lot nowadays. If, for example, you go to the mall on Saturday and there's very few people there, you could say, wow, this place is deserted. I wonder what's happening. Why isn't there more people here on a Saturday? And he talked about that the jungle reclaimed the area, the site. What does that mean, to reclaim?
Maybe took control. Yeah, I mean, took control over it. Like, you know, it's mine. You know, like this area is mine. So let me, you know, grow trees and stuff here around. Yeah.
And especially because it has the reclaim, right? It gives us the meaning that it before was this way, and it's taking it back again, right?
Yeah.
So this last part he said is very, very poetic, isn't it? It was deserted and the jungle grew back to reclaim and conceal the last great citadel of the Inca Empire.
Wow.
What does it mean to conceal something?
To hide it. You conceal it, you hide it.
And citadel? Do you know what a citadel is?
I can only think of the new series on Amazon Prime Video. Yeah, but that's
true.
a whole other meaning, you know? What's a citadel, Ethan?
Citadel is a fortress. So, yeah, I don't think it was exactly a fortress, but he's probably using that a bit poetically, right?
Yeah.
And in fact, it was the last great citadel of the Inca Empire because it was, the Spanish never found it. They destroyed many, unfortunately, they destroyed many of the important areas and cities of the Incans, but luckily they didn't find it. So it's actually quite well preserved. So again, we'll link the full documentary if you want to check it out in the show notes and the description. And before we wrap up, we have our big challenge for you guys.
All right, the big challenge is, what was your first travel experience like? Did you go abroad? Did you travel locally in your own country? Any funny incidents happened? Share your story with us by leaving us a comment here on YouTube, or you can send us an email at hello@reallifeglobal.com if you are listening to us someplace else.
We look forward to hearing what y'all have to say. Always love hearing travel stories. All right, and we wanted to make sure to take the chance to share a comment from one of our recent big challenges. So do you want to explain what that was, Thiago, and what the comment was?
Yeah, this comes from the episode where we talked about public speaking and how to use your voice to become a better communicator. And the question we asked was, what scares you the most about speaking in public? And what have you been doing to overcome this challenge? I actually got here 2 nice comments from viewers. The first one goes, I will sit for my IELTS exam soon, and I am too afraid of speaking, but after listening to that podcast, I feel confident. I am very thankful to you for your incredible work. Thank you very much. Good luck on your speaking test on IELTS. And then Celine says, as far as I'm concerned, I did theater in order to overcome it. The fear of public speaking, she means, right? When you spoke about vocal warm-ups, it reminded me of when I learned the tongue twisters. This kind of exercises are very useful. Most of all, when you are afraid to stammer. What's stammer, Ethan?
Stammer is when people, they don't, maybe we've been doing some on the podcast, they won't fully form the words. So I'm trying to think of an example I could give. Said, thanks a lot. That would be stammering.
Is it the same as stuttering?
Yeah, I think that they're very similar. I think stuttering might be someone who actually has like a medical problem. All right, thanks so much for listening or watching today's podcast. We hope that you enjoyed all of our adventures. And if you are learning with us and you want to help to spread the word, then we would really love it if you left us a 5-star review on your favorite podcast listening platform like Apple or Spotify or anywhere else, because this helps other people to discover the podcast and also take their English to the next level with us. Thanks so much for joining us, and we look forward to seeing you on the next episode of the Real Life English Podcast. 1, 2, 3. Yeah. So really excited about today's lesson. We are giving you guys 4 different exercises that you can use to improve your speaking, even if you have no one around that you can speak with, or you can't travel abroad and live in an English-speaking country, for example. These will still help you at home, alone, to improve your speaking skills. So to start off, one of my students' favorites is tongue twisters. So these are really great because they force you to say complicated